Hey, New York Jet fans from all around the world. Welcome to Laugh Through the Turbulence, a New York Jets podcast, the show that delivers you all your Jets content. Here are your hosts, John, Adden, and Monty. All the best to the New York Jet fans. J-E-T-S, Jets, 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 go Jets.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Yeah, what's going on?
We made it. We made it. We're through training camp, and here we are. 10 days. No, 1 week from the season.
One week. I can't believe it.
1 week from the season, but a couple more days and change for when we actually see the Jets in a real season game. But,
still so close. We've come so far. I mean, I can't believe when we started this like months ago that it felt like the season was never going to come, and now we're like a week away. I'm like, I can't believe it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's all right. Yeah, it's amazing, I guess. But anyway, should we get into it? Just for starters, we just want to congratulate our New York Jets for basically starting 3-0 in the
undefeated.
Yeah. And I was actually at the Jets Giants preseason game. It was like a last minute thing. A date canceled on me or whatever. Well, I canceled on a date actually, but that's a whole nother issue.
Worth it.
Yeah, it's funny. I recorded like a video of myself walking towards the stadium from the parking lot. I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this to myself again. But yeah, I mean, obviously, the Carolina game was interesting. The Giant game was very defensive, very boring on offense. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Overall, just rate the preseason experience from a 1 to 10 scale, right? Or 1 to 5 stars if you want to do it, right? You want to do stars or 1 to 10?
I mean, let's do stars. Why not?
Let's do stars. All right. So throughout the preseason, because we're basically done, right? Besides the 53 stuff, which we'll get into a little bit, but Adnan, what are your thoughts on this preseason on the stars, right? 1 to 5 stars.
Yeah, I think like the actual product on the field, I think was probably 2 stars, right? We didn't see any of the key guys outside of a couple. Fashion who played and Will McDonald and Michael Clemens played a little bit. But outside of that, we didn't really see any of the key guys. So I think from an on-field perspective, it was a lot of guys battling for spots. And that doesn't make for great preseason football, right? But with that said, on the flip side of that, I give these training camp preseason games 5 stars in the sense that nobody got hurt. They're 100% intact going into the season, right? No injuries in joint practices, nothing like that.
No Carl Lawson situation, no Becton. Yeah.
Exactly. So, no Zach getting hurt in the first preseason game, trying to run the ball, all the insane things that have happened didn't happen. So I think that's how I look at these games. Another quick thing, I know we're joking around, we're being facetious. I don't want to, give any bad omens or anything. But when looking at preseason records, just keep in mind that the Detroit Lions went 4-0. The season they went 0-16. So let's never even take any stock into the records. But again, like I said, I think successful from an injury perspective. And I think we got to see a lot of young guys play, and some of them might make some impacts. We'll talk about that when we talk about the 53.
Yeah, man. So those talent battles are always, the 53-man roster bubble guy battles. Like those are always interesting, right? They're fun to watch. They're fun to kind of, take your bets on who you think is going to be that guy that comes up. Like those Tack McKinley type players, and honestly, there's some guys that I wish kind of could have made it that maybe didn't. Like the 2 quarterbacks we had. Like I think one of those 2 guys should at least make the practice squad, and we hold on to them so that we can kind of do something with them later. But I just really love that, we came out, we did what we needed to do, it was, undefeated. So that's always a great way to start the season. the Jets have been undefeated since when was the Patriots game? Like so it's
undefeated in 2024. Undefeated in 2024.
Undefeated this year so far, and since that last game. So it's always good. I think it's a 4-star preseason experience for me, just because we saw mostly what we need to see, out of those, younger, newer guys. And we didn't, like you said, we didn't have injuries, anything major or anything like that. I'm really happy. I'm really psyched for the season coming up ahead. So, definitely a 4-star experience. It would have been 5 if we had Reddick the whole time or at all.
Okay. I'm going to give it 4.5 stars out of 5. And this is why. Okay. First off, the joint practices, we were smoking everybody we played in joint practices, right? Mind you, it was shitty competition because it was Commanders, Panthers, and Giants, right? Mm-hmm. But absolutely doing what you're supposed to do if you are truly a better roster, and that is smoke them.
Correct.
Absolutely smoke them, right? So we already knew basically that our first team stuff is working, right? And also, like, obviously with the inner practices, right, against pretty much both sides doing excellent, right? But the biggest concern, as you said, was the Haason Reddick thing, right? And the one thing that stood out the most in this preseason was the lethalness of that pass rush, regardless of the fact that Haason Reddick wasn't in there, right? All of a sudden, like, now it looks like this D-line is going to be just fucking fine because, they've got guys, plural, that look like they're going to develop and be outstanding pass rushers. Like my buddy Matt, who's a Giants fan, was just like, yeah, you guys are lethal in that pass rush, and you had like no guys in, and I'm like laughing at him a little bit because he didn't know who Tack was or McGregor, and he was just like, what the fuck? Those guys are just eating everything alive, and like that's gonna replace, Haason Reddick in theory, right? And even Will McDonald had a little snack, as I'm gonna call it, right? Which is good. I mean, his spin move when he does it is fucking lethal, right?
Absolutely.
So like, and also Leonard Taylor, we gotta throw that name out there too, because he was eating shit up too, but from the middle, it just looks like it's gonna be a great D line, right? And then obviously, like, the defense was in all the preseason games, you could safely say pretty much lights out, outside of maybe one Jaden Daniels first team drive, right? So I feel really good about it. Still undefeated in 2024. It's kind of holding to the word that Robert Saleh said, even with these preseason games. So I feel really good about it. And also, yes, no injuries, which is the huge thing, right? Just very minor ones with, like, I guess Lecky Fotu is going to start on injured reserve. Yeboah as well. But, Lecky would have been the bigger one, I guess, because he was borderline going to take Kinlaw's spot, but that's okay. And then Jordan Travis, we already knew, right?
Yeah.
And then I guess Bernard Converse was going to – it might be injured to start too, right? But that's more of a depth signing. And maybe that's a little bit of a concern with Michael Carter maybe being questionable for week 1.
Yeah. I think that's all fair.
That is fair. Excellent. Okay, so now – let's talk about the 53-man roster. Now, what I did was I basically put together an Excel spreadsheet, right? Because I do Excel spreadsheets. Let me get our little faces in here too, right? But basically, I've been kind of keep track of, like, literally, like, everything that's kind of going on with free agency, right? And it basically, this is what we kind of see right now. And no, this has been updated for Jason Brownlee being cut, right? Mm-hmm. Or like waived, right? And then Brendan Bates is, I guess I'm putting in his tight end 3 right now, is in the slot right now, right? But basically that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah. For the folks at home, this is fairly new news as of today. Jason Brownlee has been waived. So just in case you didn't know,
we're breaking news. Oh my gosh, guys! But I think this is the right roster as of now. And obviously Reddick is not on here. Because he hasn't shown up, so he doesn't count towards the 53. So if he wants to show up, he will. Probably Watts will get the boot out there. But Watts has been pretty good too, So I just think it's right call, right? 2 quarterbacks is really all you need. They're gonna have a practice squad guy. It's probably gonna be Martinez, I think, just because I think he's got the most upside. Is he made?
Yeah. Yeah. I want to touch on that. I mean, he had a good season. I mean, if you look at like, the pure passing, statistics, I mean, Peasley went, 20 for 33, 181 yards and a touchdown. He had an 85 and a half passer rating and a 60% completion percentage. But and Martinez was not as good as that in terms of like, stats and numbers. However, Martinez was 25 for 47 for 270 yards. And he scrambles and he, led a game-winning drive. So, like, I feel more comfortable with someone like Martinez, who is an MVP in the UFL and has that background. I hope we keep him over, even though Peasley looks good too. Either is okay though.
I think that's the accurate assessment. And on the running backs, it looks like Izzy made it.
Yeah,
very good. I was worried about that, so I'm glad that he I'm glad he was able to make it. Definitely good to see them keeping 4 running backs. I think we've talked about it all off season. I think this is an indication that proves even more that they just want to pound the ball. I think they're going to be running the ball a lot more than people think. So I think Izzy was more decisive. He had some nice runs. He was consistent in everything that he did. So keeping him, I think, is a very big deal. And somebody that, along with these kind of defensive linemen, these undrafted free agents, I think the other piece of it is that the Jets knew some of these guys weren't going to get through waivers, right? Izzy was not going to get through waivers. Leonard Taylor wasn't. You look at McGregor and Watts, they weren't. So I think they put these guys on the 53 knowing that they wouldn't be able to revert them to the practice squad. So they all had, great preseasons, and I'm glad that, the roster looks the way that it does.
Yeah, Izzy could be a borderline RB2, RB3 on like a lesser team for sure. Like, on some teams that are weak or just need that speedster set at the, he could do it. I mean, look, just
outside a real corner, it might be the strongest position group we have. Maybe linebacker, if you go CJ and Quincy exclusively just on that, but like depth, right? But like in terms of depth, like any one of them could, be put into any NFL roster, no problem. On that
let me just give Izzy his shine real quick. 6.1 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns, and 21 carries for 129 yards this preseason. I mean, he did what he was supposed to do. That's why he made the roster. So
pretty good. And the pass blocking stepped up.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good point.
Anecdotally, I did see very small sample size, but some things on Twitter. There were some Cowboy fans that were upset that the Jets kept Izzy because they wanted him. So there are teams like that probably, in all honesty, would have preferred a guy like Izzy to Dalvin Cook, who they just signed. So I think there is value, and I think the Jets knew that, and that's why they kept him. And look, I think he's going to be a good piece for them, another young running back. This is also probably the youngest running back, room in the league. 2 rookies, a third-year guy and a second-year guy. So it's like it's really interesting. So I'm glad it shaped out the way that it did.
Yeah, Cowboys look like kind of a mess in that running back.
The running back room is going to be a disaster.
It was funny. Like I did a fantasy draft. I'll talk about it real quick. I had the 6th pick. CD fell to me. And just
at the 6, Jesus Christ!
It was before the contract, to be fair, but I kind of was assured of that. He's going to get so much volume that running that line is going to be a disaster for the Cowboys. Okay, but anyway, go to the wide receivers. Got I have Lazard as the starter here just because that's the way it was listed on the website. If that's fair. But basically, we're keeping 6 because it was 7 with Brownlee, but they cut him. And I think part of that also was because of the Yeboah thing, and they weren't certain about that. So he was the borderline one, right, Brownlee?
Yeah, and I think that was the interesting one to me, right? Out of all of this, I think the 2 interesting things were the 3 undrafted free agents and the fact that they did keep 7 receivers, and I think that is, like you said, John, kind of towards they weren't sure what was going to happen at the third tight end, and you can't go into a season with just 2 tight ends. So I think this is interesting. Keeping Irv Charles over Brownlee just shows how much this staff values, special teams guys. And I think they're kind of doing that a lot. Guys like Chaz Surratt and Zaire Browns, they're key special teams guys. So it's good to see that they're keeping guys like that. I love Brownlee, but listen, if he's playing meaningful snaps for this team, something went wrong. Right? So I think I like the direction that they went with this.
Yeah. And I just want to echo one thing clear. Fullback. Right now, there is none designated, but it's supposedly Jeremy Rutgers going to be the fullback, too.
Right, which I think is great because he is a blocker, and he can catch the ball from that position. So I think that's the way to go.
Yep. Okay. On the O-line, it's really no surprises there, right? This was it was just whether it was going to be 9 or 10, but reality, we all kind of thought it was going to be 10, and it's the 10 you guys you expected.
Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
No fucking question. Obviously, Newman was going to earn a spot after his performance during the preseason.
Yeah.
The starters were going to be Vachon was going to be there, and obviously Mitchell and Carter Warren did show you something during the preseason too, right? So, and they're developing, which is good, because last year, we weren't so hot. And now it gets interesting with the edge stuff and the D line, right? So, obviously, Will McDonald's penciled in as the starter right now, which is interesting in itself, but I think it's right for now, just because that is your first round pick, right? And obviously you don't have Reddick right now, right? But the rest of the depth makes total sense. Clemens, Tack, McGregor, Watts is probably the guy that gets taken off if Haason Reddick decides to show up, and we'll do a little rant session for it at the end of this episode, right? And then on the D tackle positions, it's Quinnen, obviously, it's Kinlaw because that's a first round talent. Solomon Thomas, also a first round talent too. It's crazy if you actually look at this D line. And if you throw in Reddick, there's 7 first rounders on that D line.
Yeah, and we're so bossed up at D tackle right now, man. That's crazy. Leonard Taylor is good. He might be better. He's better than Fotu.
He's better
than Fotu. Look at the PFF how he's graded out. Most recently, now Fotu's the better run stuffer.
Yes,
but overall, Leonard is a solid guy to have on that tackle.
I'm confident in this D line right now without Reddick. I really am.
Same, and I would also say about Leonard Taylor, I think it also just goes to, again, say whatever you want about this staff, just their defensive acumen. Leonard Taylor has come out and said a couple of times that the Jets are finally using me right. At the University of Miami, they weren't putting him in a position to succeed. They were playing him all over the place. He's a defensive tackle. He's not a guy. He's not like a JFM where you're going to move him inside and outside. He's a defensive tackle. And the Jets are finally using him there. And I think that just shows that they get how to, get the most out of these players. So really glad to see him able to break through. And the other thing about these guys is, again, McGregor, Watts, and Taylor, they all had draftable grades. So the fact that they fell and ended up being undrafted free agents is really interesting. And I think it just worked out in the Jets' favor that they were able to get all 3 of them. So I think very nice work by the Jets front office and scouting team there.
Yeah, the D line is going to be a problem for everybody. I'm very confident in it. The linebackers, they decided to go with 5, which I think is fine because a lot of those linebackers are going to fill some special teams roles too. So that's kind of important. Sherwood, it's good to see him still there. Chaz and Zaire, Barnes, that's good. Obviously, you knew the starters were going to be the starter. Yeah, that's solid. Cornerbacks, there's no surprise there, right? Stiggers and Jarek are probably the 2 that were we didn't know. Stiggers we kind of knew because
you were hearing stuff
really great
the whole time. Yeah,
and both of them got a lot of work and they earned their spots, and there was really nothing they gave up, right? I guess Bernard Converse, right? He gave up the one fucking catch that was a ridiculous ball from Jaden Daniels and a ridiculous catch and in the tightest fucking window of coverage.
Right, but Converse has been good otherwise. We've
heard
things about him. Good. He's been kind of one of those fan favorite bubble type guys that everyone's been rooting for, and he made the team for good reason. So let's see what you can do.
Yep. And the safety room right now, that is what it is right now. Obviously, there's a little news on that, which we'll get into a little bit. But right now, it's Chuck Clark and Tony Adams in the starting slot, Ashton Davis there, and Isaiah Oliver, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Special teams, that is what it is. It's the best special teams group in the fucking league, and that's just a great group. Yep.
Absolutely.
Any surprises there from you guys?
So from my perspective, like this is the thing, and I kind of wanted to give my 30,000 foot view of this roster as
30,000, not 10,000.
Yeah, nope, 30,000, man. You got to look at this high. So I one of the great things. So first, I'll answer your question, John. Not really any surprises. The one thing, like I said, that was interesting is they kept 7 receivers, but again, that was due to the tight end, right? So outside of that, nothing really. We knew who the guys were going to be as long as they were healthy. But when looking at this from a high level view, right? I mean, as Jet fans, we don't get this often, right? Where we aren't trolling the waiver wire and saying, oh man, look, the third string left guard from the Colts was cut. He started 6 games last year. He might be an upgrade. Let's sign him, right? Like all of this stuff was just end of the roster gymnastics. The roster just is in really good shape. A lot of talent. The 2 deep is spoken for, so I think it's a really good thing just for fans to be able to go into this and look at it and be like, man, the biggest thing is should they have cut Brownlee today, right? That's like the only thing you're looking at. So I think it's just the best spot as not just the team, but as fans we've been in a very long time. So I think we're off to a great start. So I'm really excited to see it.
Yeah, I mean, just to jump in on that, no real, surprises, but just looking at, how complete the roster is for once, like even like down to construction, like you could see it's kind of meticulously crafted. Like you got 2 big body guys in at receiver in Mike Williams and Lazard. You got the gadget type guy in Corley. You have the everything Swiss Army Superman receiver in Garrett Wilson. In the on the line, we've got a great balance of run and pass blocking. But you can definitely tell that this team is built to run the shit out of the football. I mean, it's just like there's just not really any glaring holes in the roster for once in a very, very, very long time. It's been a very long time since I look at this roster and I'm like, damn, like, these are people that I'd want on like my fantasy team. These are people that I think are going to be great in Madden. These are people who I think are going to be players that other people talk about. You know what I mean? Like before, like when our best running back was Michael Carter, like, I wasn't really like, that excited for the Jets roster.
Or old Matt Forte or like whatever.
Yeah, those guys. But like now it's like I'm like,
yeah, you should be excited for this roster.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Wanting to go buy jerseys and shit.
Yeah. I just want to make one note of maybe one thing that was a little bit of a surprise was when the Jets did trade Brandon Codrington to the Bills. And it was late pick swaps. And by the way, interdivision trades are very rare. They're very rare. How rare are they with the Bills? And can anyone guess what the last year was that the Bills and the Jets made a trade?
2015.
Okay, no, none. Not even close.
2000.
Not even close. The answer's wrong. All right. First off, I have never been on this earth for a Jets-Bills trade until this one. Wow. It's been since 1987.
Jesus, I thought it would have been like some bullshit player that didn't matter. That's why
it was a bullshit. It was Don Smith was sent to the Jets for a conditional 1988 draft pick.
Yeah, so there you go. So I don't like it. I mean, listen. What do I like? I like the idea of taking a UDFA and turning it into picks or a. What they get in this
so
case
they got
was like a 6 and a
swap or something like that.
So they traded him and a 2026 7th for a 2026 6th.
Yeah, exactly. So I do like that.
10 times fast. Say it 10 times fast. Yeah, Jesus.
But I don't like the idea because he looks good as a returner. Like Codrington was doing some shit. He's pretty nice with the return game.
You got Herb Charles, you got Gibson, you got
no. That's not the point. I get that
three
we
guys
have.
that can do it, though. You
I
know
get
what I mean?
that we have.
Izzy, too, in theory, could do it as well.
Well,
you
no,
know?
I think the
I
point
get
is
that we have talent. Why are we gonna take good talent and put it in the same division as us
that's the
to make
issue.
them better?
No.
You're telling me there's not 30, there's 31 other or 30 other teams in the league. You're telling me not one could have used a returner of that caliber, and we could have kicked them for maybe a little bit lesser of a pick, but you wouldn't have
Maybe
to
the
see
Jets
him.
know something. Maybe the Jets know something that the Bills don't know.
Maybe, or maybe it's a favor. I don't know. Maybe they're
I
like,
don't know.
hey,
Hey,
I don't know something.
you took out our quarterback, you know, blah, blah, but maybe it's a favor to him. Like, give him a good home.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, on the surface, I'm not a big fan, but at the end of the day, you know, as long as he doesn't return a kick or a punt for a touchdown against the Jets, it is what it is. You know what I mean?
As long as he's not the next fucking Devin Hester, you know, then I'll be okay with it, I'm sure. But right now, I'm like, why'd you do that?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think
but that was a good point. It probably was doing him a favor because he really did show out and he really did a good job. But you know, we couldn't keep him because we already are stacked with talent for the first time ever. So you know, yeah, sure, he's probably a nice guy, and the Jets aren't like trying to screw people these days. So good.
Okay. Anyway, interesting news that did happen was a signing the Jets did to the practice squad. As of now, it's Cine, who was a first-round pick, I want to say in 2022, if I'm right, to Minnesota. He was the last pick in that draft, that first-round draft. He got hurt, I want to say week 4 that first season, and I guess they just gave up on him, right?
Yeah.
They just gave up on him. And also, it's a totally different regime that drafted him, I believe, and all that. So, like, there's some of that too, but I mean, he was a Georgia safety, right? Drafted in the first round, but he's on our practice squad right now. You guys think of anything from this? I guess Isaiah Oliver is the only one in question, I guess, in that, right? But you know, he looked pretty good too, you know?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you know, like you said, SEC pedigree, you know, he's first round talent. He was a solid tackler. I was looking at some of his stats, played 3 years at Georgia. Solid tackler, you know, kind of profiles a little bit like Tony Adams in terms of height, weight, and what he's good at, which is again, you know, tackling. So I mean, cool. I'm cool with it. You know, you know, it's if he comes to our squad, he's only going to get better. So yeah, let's see what he can do.
Yeah, and he's got a championship in his blood too with Georgia, so you know there's that.
Yeah, no, and I think
it's a high upside signing for the practice squad, right?
Correct.
And it's somebody, you know, I think the one position we can all agree on that they need a little bit more depth is safety. So if you can get a guy with that kind of talent for basically nothing, right? Again, first round pedigree, Georgia pedigree, a guy that, you know, is coming into a situation where, as we had said before, this team knows what to do with defensive players. I mean, they made Tony Adams into Tony Adams as an undrafted free agent. So a guy with first-round talent, you know, they could get something big out of him potentially. So I think nothing but upside there. So good move.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. Anyway, the other news that came out, and this one is definitely due to the Jets just being kind of like a big talk of the town, because there's no way this documentary gets made when it should have gotten made, right? Which probably should have been earlier because this group was amazing. But ESPN 30 for 30, New York Sack Exchange is beginning filming. That's kind of cool.
I love it.
Cool. 30 for 30 hasn't really done much lately, right? But this is a good group to do, right? This kind of makes me feel like the Orlando Magic Moment kind of documentary when you had Penny and Shaq put together and like you thought they were going to be great, dynasty, and it just never happened, right? It's kind of like this, I think, with the Sack Exchange, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, when we did our draft, you know, I was picking a lot of Sack Exchange era players when we did our draft of like all-time, you know, Jets players. So for me, I can't wait to see
who drafted Sack Exchange guys?
What do you mean? Who drafted Sack Exchange guys?
I don't know. Who got Klecko? Who got Gastineau?
I think you got Klecko, right?
I got them both.
You got both?
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I got them both.
Nice.
Yeah. So what are you fucking talking about? You lying to the camera? Fake news?
No, well, you had a bunch of I'm sorry, you had taken
I
the
had the
pick ahead
second
of me.
exchange. I had the second
You
exchange.
took the pick ahead of me. That remember you changed the picks.
I had the last pick.
Yeah.
I had the last pick.
You
Yeah,
did
first.
change picks at the last minute.
Yeah.
Okay. But
Took
I don't
picks.
know. It's gonna be cool because, like, honestly, there's some fucking personalities on that line. Obviously, you know, Klecko wrestled a bear on TV. I don't know if anyone remembers that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
He wrestled a bear and won.
I think
Yeah.
the other piece of it, right? It's always good to kind of go down memory lane as a fan, especially for things that happened, before your time or when you were really young, just to see, how those guys interacted and what it was like. I just read a book on the 86 Mets, and just like reading a book about, a team that was, around when I was very
Just
young.
cocaine. Just say cocaine.
Yeah,
And you sum up the whole team.
it's interesting times, right? I
It
think
was
we
a
can
wild
see,
era.
yeah, 80s. So I think it'll be a really cool documentary, something for Jet fans to look forward to. And, like you said, lots of personality. So I think it's going to be a really interesting look. And 30 for 30s usually are done very well.
Yeah.
So, I think it's going to be good to see.
Yeah, and obviously Lions and Abdul Salam will get their moment, which is great. And then Mark Gastineau is a fucking personality, right? I mean, this dude was in Playgirl, I believe, right? And he was also the most flamboyant celebrations for a defensive end, right? By far.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's going to be cool.
Especially for that time too, because it wasn't as like, I feel like we've gotten better over time at Celebration. So
yeah, I feel you on that. Anyway, do you guys want to have that talk again about that dude Haason?
Oh Jesus! Have you guys seen the workout videos he's posting now?
He's doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, he's posting
joke.
videos of showing. I mean, listen, it looks sharp. I'm not gonna lie, but it's
Which
just
is
like
good.
But it's just like him without even like pads on, and he's wearing a freaking snapback baseball cap. Like it's not super serious, but he looks crisp. He's hitting the dummy thing with some punch, and he's got some good plants and cuts. So that's the good part. That's the good news. The bad news is it seems like he's kind of taunting a little bit. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. I don't like it.
Well, I think from that perspective, right? And this is just how I'm reading into it. I feel like there is maybe a little bit of concern seeping into his camp now, right? Because it is coming up. The Jets are preparing for the 49ers right now. They're getting ready for their week 1 opponent. They aren't calling and begging him to come back. The defensive line has looked fine without him.
Amazing without it.
Yeah, and they haven't suffered any injuries that would make them say, oh, now we have to pay him, right? So I think he's sensing a little bit of pressure that this can drag out into the regular season. And I think this is just kind of a ploy by him and his agent. It's like T.O. doing sit-ups in his driveway, right? It's the same exact vibe. And I just think that, he's going to feel it. And I think things like this make him a little bit closer to coming back and showing up because he doesn't want to lose all that money. And if the Jets aren't going to beg him, like, what options does he really have, especially the defense looking good, without him? So I think him and his agent played this wrong, and I think it's going to come back to bite them.
Yeah, I just want to echo one thing per PFF, just on the evaluation of the Jets preseason for the defensive unit. Okay, they were given for the team grades. I'm not going to go into individual grades, right? Team grade defense second of all the 32 teams, just behind the Bears who played a little bit more starters, right? The run defense was 11th, which is not really what you paid him for, right? I'll just highlight the coverage. It was basically third, but like literally it's at 87.7, which is like fucking high. It was just Chargers and Broncos right up there, right? Yep. And the pass rush was third also. And that's with no fucking starters or anything like that. That's just scheme. I mean, yes, it's like second and third team guys going against second and third team guys too, and some starters because you had Evan Neal in the game, right, in the Giants game, and he just got destroyed, right?
Yeah, he's bad, and I think there's the Giants center was in too. Like, so I think
that was bad. That was really bad.
Yeah,
that was really bad.
I think that in all honesty, right? Look, those numbers are great, and it does speak to scheme and coaching and all of that. Should it be taken with a big grain of salt? Absolutely, because like you said, a lot of these performances were against guys who aren't going to be on a roster, right?
Still,
so
1% of the 1%, even still, but like yes, like
right,
in terms
again,
of people on the planet that can do football, right?
Right, of course, but out of that 1% of 1%, they were going against guys who aren't going to be on an NFL roster today, right? That's just a fact. So expecting these undrafted guys to come in and play like Quinnen Williams and Haason Reddick, right? I think that's asking a lot. I think they can be, guys that can come in, give you 7 to 10 snaps where they don't blow the game for you. But if they're game-changing guys, especially, early in the season, I'll be shocked. I think they're guys that will be rotational, that will play a few plays here and there to spell the starters, and I don't think they'll see any big-time snaps until later in the season, if at all. So definitely interesting. I love them, and I think, they did a great job in the preseason. But again, let's take that with a grain of salt.
Do you want to know how much money he's missed out on just not being in the building?
It's got to be like what,
$6 million?
like
it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. I saw the number just now. I think it said $4.7 million.
Yeah.
So,
damn. I thought it was
here's the breakdown, right? Or I'm going to give it in parts, right? So $250K was for a workout bonus if he showed up. Obviously, that didn't happen. The 2-day mandatory camp, mandatory mini camp, fine $100K. Okay. Wow. Each day of training camp that he missed, a non-waivable $50K a day.
$50K, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and then and if he doesn't, and he also lost out on $2.37 million if he didn't report before any of the 3 preseason games.
Yeah, he's probably going to show up for his first
the way
game.
The contract works, it's 14.25, and it's 18th of that basically per thing. So yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, so he'll show up for his first game check probably like a day before, I would imagine, is when he reports eventually.
I mean, I just can't him.
It's crazy.
But here's the thing, right? I think if he does miss time, it will be week 1. And I think it will all be dependent on how the Jets play, right? In week 1, if the Jets have a ferocious pass rush and they win or they lose close, then I think he's going to be more motivated to show up on his own. If they play in that game and for some reason they can't generate a pass rush, that might change things on the Jets side. So I think it's going to be interesting to see.
That ain't happening.
I mean, listen, they're going against. Listen, John, I get it, man.
They're going
against the Jets.
They're going against the Niners, bro.
Yeah, but look what's on that offensive line right now for the Niners right now. What is there in the building right now is actually
John, again, I get what you're saying, but it's Kyle Shanahan. He's a genius. He masks all of those deficiencies. So again, I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't have a ferocious pass rush, right? Now, that game looks like one they can win. Trent Williams, Brandon Ayuk, McCaffrey was out all preseason, so things are shifting towards the Jets. But listen, I wouldn't take anything for granted when you're playing a 49ers offense. That's all I'm saying.
Trent Williams still hasn't shown up.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Does he need to?
Fair. And the Niners need him to show up. He's the best tackle in football.
No, I mean, does he need to show up for preseason?
It's for a contract holdout. It's a contract holdout.
I know.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
He'll get it sorted out.
He's doing the same thing that Chris Jones did last year, basically. If you're best at that position, right? I'm going to sit out and watch you suffer that first week, as it happened with Kansas City against the Lions in that first game, right? And Brock Purdy's going to get fucking murdered if he's not there. Murdered. And you got to remember, it's a complete unit of the offensive line, right? It's a 5-man unit, right? And those things have to work so well together. And right now you're missing your key piece, right? And you're going against I still think it's a top 3 D line without Haason Reddick, right? You got
either way, it's brutal. Even if
yeah.
it's a top 10 D line, it's still brutal for them to go against without.
It's
Trent
brutal
Williams.
with a subpar. It is a subpar unit with since like it was at its peak, by the way, like their first Super Bowl run, and then it faded out, right? It's not. I mean, they did bulk up on it a little bit, but it's not what it was. It's just Trent Williams at this point, and they scheme very well. And Kittle does his thing where he moves out for the blocking. Like they make it work, but it's not an elite unit. It can get beat. But and you saw the Ravens last year in that Monday night game, I believe it was, just destroy them on that on the offensive line. You just saw, and it's a very similar unit in terms of skill, in terms of defensive skill.
Yeah, totally fair.
Well, yeah.
I
mean,
I think I made a good point.
We have a good chance, right? I mean, we definitely have a good chance, as good as any other team right now. So, we'll see how that plays out. But I don't know. I still think that they figure it all out. I think that they'll get Trent, they'll get Ayuk. I think they'll figure all those pieces out before game 1.
I drafted Ayuk in the hopes that he'd miss that game and all that shit. But anyway, can we go to final thoughts though? Since this episode went pretty well, I could show the Instagram things that we're talking about, but let's save it for next week, right? But yeah, so Monty, why don't you just kick it off?
Yeah, man. I mean, listen, it's we got a great season ahead. It's not much more that really needs to be said. We had a great great episode today talking about just the roster and how it ended up and how there's no holes. And I'm just super pumped about it all. So it's, it's just good. It's good all the way around. No injuries, knock on wood. Let's go and show what we're made of. And I can't wait to see it next week.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to use my final thought time to talk about the Aaron Rodgers book that came out.
I got it.
I got it the day it came out. I've read the first few chapters. Couple of things that I will say is, number one, it's mentioned in kind of like the introduction in the book that this is an unauthorized biography that Aaron Rodgers was interviewed for. So the introduction goes through like the Aaron Rodgers interview and things of that nature for the book. Initially, I think it's pretty well balanced. I think it has a lot of interesting information, especially starting from when he was, young, going through, his formative years, middle school, high school, just hearing about how he was, 5 years old and his favorite thing to do, his dad said, his dad made him like a cardboard cutout football field, and he would just like draw up plays at 5 years old. Like, he's been a football savant his entire life. That's one of the things he loves the most about the game. So it's just really interesting reading all of that. I haven't got into the family stuff yet or anything like that. So I'm sure that will have some interesting pieces to it. But so far, I would highly recommend Jet fans, obviously, just an Aaron Rodgers fan, get it. I think it's really interesting. And yeah, so definitely go out and get that and check it out. In regards to the team, very happy where we are. And let's just get to Monday night and let's start the season off right. So we'll have a lot more stuff coming up, but really excited where we are and get the Aaron Rodgers book.
Yeah, he's done very well in his dating roster, hasn't he?
I haven't gotten into that part yet, but
come up in that book somewhere. Yeah,
I mean, he's not Derek Jeter, but
he's not hurt.
Derek Jeter's a Hall of Famer dating roster by far. And like his dating roster is better than any movie star, I would think.
I agree. I think
besides maybe Leo is the closest, I think. Just because Leo's like, oh, you're 25 and you got.
But but I think the thing
Leo's got that filtering process, yeah.
But the difference with Leo is, I think, like, a lot of the girls, they're like models and things like that. You look at Derek Jeter. I mean, they were the stars.
Yeah,
of,
top
it
of
was
the top.
Triple A list.
I mean,
Adriana Lima, Scarlett Johansson are my two favorite that he got.
Alba,
Jessica Alba, Jessica Biel, I think, too, for a minute,
Jessica
right?
Biel,
Yeah.
Mariah Carey.
It's
So
fucking
he was
insane.
like A of the A list, like Monty said. So I don't think you can compare many people to him. But
yeah, Derek Jeter's dick looks up to him. And he's like, dude, thank you.
You always have to take it to the worst possible spot.
I'm not,
Go ahead with your final word, John.
I'm excited for football. Like, I maybe wasn't as excited, doing this recording every week and all that, right? But when I got into the stadium and I kind of felt the electricity of Jets Giants preseason, and also the women there are just absolutely gorgeous. It's going to be like that Bills game that we had, right? But besides the point, like, it was just exciting to feel football again. In person, right? And we go to the game. I go to all the home games, and occasionally we'll go to a road game or two. It's here, and it felt a little different this time in that stadium. After what we went through last year, and like basically it was less like, oh my God, we got Aaron Rodgers, we're gonna, but it was more like, we're ready for this. It was more of a focused energy, a positivity. And looking at this team, like, this team looks like they're legit versus last year where it was kind of like it's a little bit of a circus, right? So I don't know. I'm very excited for it. And the Jets are now the favorite to win the division, which is awesome. And speaking of the division, fuck the Patriots, fuck the Dolphins, fuck the Bills, man, big time. Go Jets.
Let's go Jets.
Let's go.
Thank you.